Good afternoon and welcome to the Tempe City Council meeting for June 8, 2017 here in the Harry E. Mitchell Government Center. For all those that are able, could you please rise, join us with an invocation by Councilmember Cubey, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to read an invocation from the Reverend Dr. Eric Letterman, pastor of the University Presbyterian Church. Tempe continues to be on the cutting edge of creatively imagining what community is and can be. We come from many different social, ethnic, and philosophical backgrounds, some religious, some not religious, some with academic experience, and many with life experience. Discerning how we will live together peaceably amidst our diversity is the work of our city, county, state, and national governments, as well as the work of every person in our society. We live in increasingly complicated times. This is Dr. Letterman speaking. I give thanks for this council and the creativity and equity with which it has sought to govern over the years amidst these challenges. I charge you, council members, to act not just with a sense of justice, but compassionate justice that considers the impact of your decisions, especially on those most vulnerable. I charge you to act not just with wisdom, but with the wisdom that is shaped by the responsibility you bear as leaders of Tempe and within the state of Arizona. I charge you to listen with empathetic ears as you discern what is often a long list of seemingly competing interests and values, and make decisions that are for the long-term health and well-being of the people of Tempe, rather than the elusive short-term gains that often only benefit a few and hurt many. I charge you to remember in your deliberations that you are the council of both those who voted for you and those who did not. You are council members for those who are religious and those who are not, those who are Democratic, Republican, Green Party, Libertarian, as well as those who choose not to identify with a party. You are council members for the homeless as much as for those who own or rent their homes. You are the council for the citizen as well as the immigrant, documented or undocumented, who lives among us. Reverend Dr. Letterman concludes, may you be blessed with wisdom, a deep sense of compassionate justice, and a strong spirit of thoughtful discernment in your deliberations tonight and always.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation. Councilman Navarro, I think you're on the phone.
Yes, I am.
Okay. With that, next is our minutes. Councilmember Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. I make a motion we approve items 3A, 1 through 3.
It's been moved by Councilmember Keating. It's been seconded by Vice Mayor Arredondo Savage. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Councilmember Keating.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I motion we approve item B1.
It's been moved by Councilmember Keating and seconded by Vice Mayor Arredondo Savage. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion does move forward. Next is reports and announcements. I do not have any. I'll hand it over to our city manager.
Just very briefly, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Typically in this time, I would like to speak about goings-on of our staff, but given the fact that this individual who recently passed away served a critical role in the selection process of our current police chief, I thought it was worthwhile to mention and to express condolences to the family of Mary Bishop, who passed away recently and was celebrated her life this week. 87 years old, lived a significant portion of that time within the city of Tempe, was an educator and a great friend to this community, and she will be very much missed.
All right. With that, next on our agenda is our consent agenda. All the items listed on the consent agenda will be considered as a group and will be enacted with one motion by the Tempe City Council unless an item is removed for separate consideration. Members of the public may remove a public hearing items for separate consideration. Public hearing items are designated by an asterisk, and council members may remove any item for separate consideration. If you do wish to speak on a public hearing item, please fill out a speaker's card, which can be found in the back of the room, and please hand it over to our city clerk. I will call your name and it is your turn for public comment. The next consent agenda items is as follows: miscellaneous items 5A1 through 5AB, awards and bids of contracts items 5B1 through 5B5, bless you, and resolutions items 5C1 through 5C2. Again, any agenda item that was just read on the consent agenda, if it is marked with an asterisk, it is a public hearing item, and it can be removed by a member of the public for separate consideration. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to have any of the public hearing items marked with an asterisk removed for separate consideration? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, we'll close that portion. Is there any comments or discussion from the council on the consent agenda as read? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion regarding the consent agenda as read.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Shapira and seconded by Councilmember Keating. Please vote. Councilmember Navarro.
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0. Next on our agenda is our non-consent agenda. All the items listed on the non-consent agenda will be considered separately. Agenda items scheduled for an introduction and first public hearing will be heard but will not be voted upon at this meeting. Agenda items scheduled for a second public hearing and final adoption will be voted upon tonight. The first section of the non-consent agenda is miscellaneous items, bids, contracts, and resolutions. Item 6A1 is hold a public hearing to adopt a resolution approving a fiscal year 2017-18 annual assessment of the City of Tempe, Downtown Tempe Enhanced Services and Improvement District, ruling on objections, making corrections, approving a new district map, and approving modified assessments. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under item 6A1? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, I'll close that portion. Any comments or discussion from the council on item 6A1? Is there a motion on item 6A1? It's been moved by Councilmember Cubey. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Granville. Please vote.
Yes.
That motion carries 7-0. The next section of the non-consent agenda is ordinances and items for introduction and first hearing. These items will be read and introduced tonight, but no votes will be taken. The second hearings and votes of items 6B1 and 6B3 are scheduled for June 15, 2017, and the second hearing and vote for item 6B2 is scheduled for July 27, 2017. Ordinance and items for introduction and first hearing. Item 6B1 is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance amendments related to the unnamed aerial vehicles by amending ordinance amending Chapter 23, Article 3, Division 1 of the Tempe City Code relating to park rules generally by amending Section 23-40 relating to prohibited activities and by amending Chapter 23, Article 5, Division 2 of the Tempe City Code relating to preserve rules and regulations by amending Section 23-110 relating to the rules of use, criminal penalty. The final public hearing is scheduled for June 15th, 2017. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to make a comment on item 6B1? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, I'll close that portion. Any comments or discussion from the council?
Mayor,
Yes.
I believe there's someone in the audience that wanted to speak.
Oh,
She had their
I
hand
don't
up.
have a card.
I know, I don't have cards either.
I know.
That's okay.
I didn't,
Them to you.
I didn't see you raise your, sorry, Deb.
That's okay. No.
I didn't see you raise your hand.
I appreciate you giving me a chance to speak. I appreciate that you've included Papago Park in there. Originally, we had asked for desert parks, and that would include Evelyn Hallman and Lo Piano. And so I just asked that that be considered. Evelyn Hallman will not be, as I understand it, is not part of the preserve when that occurs. And yet it is a very natural area. We get 3 different kinds of heron, we get egrets, we get osprey, and I don't know what the effect of the drones on that would be. So just asking if you would consider saying desert parks instead of just Papago.
Councilman Spire.
Mayor, I know this came up when we discussed this before, and I don't know if our staff can maybe answer this question, but I thought because of the distance from the airport, frankly, this park and actually the other parks that we're including in the ordinance, it already was prohibited to
All
take off
they
and
have to
landing in
do
parks.
is call the tower and say, I'm there.
Oh,
And
okay.
they are permitted.
Is that really?
Yeah, and I've had it occur. We had someone doing aerobatics and racing back and forth really fast, and I asked them, are you supposed to be doing that right here? And I was told, no, I just need to call the tower. I said, well, did you do that? And he stopped, he did it right then, and he said, okay, I'm clear now. So another gentleman who was a commercial, I asked him, and he said, yes, he had called, and it was in, and Anyway,
Mayor, did our staff confirm that that's true, or did you just hear that from those folks that were at the park using the drones?
if I remember correctly, that came up at the public meeting, but
Can
I
our
could
staff
research
confirm
it
that or
further
deny
if
that?
it's a question.
Not really.
Mayor?
Yeah, Joel?
Now, to that point, that's what, and just because, obviously I've been well involved in this, the issue with naming any park, even Tempe Beach Park or even the preserve or whatever we want to do, it still involves the presence of PD. It still involves a witness. It still involves a whole bunch of things before something can be enacted. Obviously, that person that we mentioned or that was described, if they called the FAA, the tower, so to speak, to get clearance, that can happen. But at the same time, if there is an event going on or anything going on or a concern, they can deny. The thing is, our police department has to verify if that occurred, or we have to verify that occurred. They can tell any citizen that, hey, yeah, I did that, no problem. But there still has to be a verification. In between that time of verification, all this other stuff, that person can leave, a whole bunch of things could happen. So with the state law, and just so you know, with the FAA, they don't regulate it. They just basically say, yeah, you can or can't, and give it really kind of advise, don't fly above this or don't do this, and that's great. But the enforcement comes by the state law, and it really, in our ordinance, we say take off and landing within our park. It doesn't prohibit anybody from taking off across the street and walking into a park and flying into a park and then landing across the street. They still can do that.
My understanding
And
state law is
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, it's just that's the kind of the debate that's ongoing. That does what our ordinance have, does it really hold teeth, or is it just more of a, hey, we have this ordinance because, and it makes us feel safer, but in reality, it doesn't have, it really kind of doesn't have teeth unless you are going to actually prosecute. You have witness, you have PD, you have verification, you have FAA, a whole bunch of things have to go in line with that. Because any individual can take off and land outside of the park and still walk within the park and fly it. And they still can get approval by the FAA to fly within that zone and still be perfectly legal and then land it outside of the park. And they know those rules. There has been some, and just within backgrounds, and just recently I've checked, there has been some other ordinances in various other cities. And I guess Newport Beach has probably one of the better ones out there when it comes to drones, takeoff and landing, because they don't know how complicated it is. They understand that it is a hard thing to really manage or control if there is a violation. And I guess with that being said, and with where the state law is, where the FAA guidelines are, literally we could have no real ordinance or no real ordinance on our parks on the takeoff and landing. We still would have to. They still have to follow the rules. They still can't violate certain things, and they would have to fall in those lines. So I'm really having a hard time questioning if us having an ordinance really has value. And I'm going to pitch it to the council to talk about this, because I'm either way I'm really okay. That's fine, but in the scheme of things, it still will happen. And then there's other questions when the use of drones are in the area of the lake or in the area of Papico Park, which is very sought off for videography and getting pictures and video and a whole bunch of other stuff. I might have Chuck chime in on this, where state law might prohibit us on this.
Chuck's waiting.
Other cities are
until you're done.
okay. Other cities are regulating it through fees. They're adding a fee. If you're going to do if you have a private business that is going to capitalize on the lake or the buildings and taking photography to enhance your business, then you have to pay a fee to the city. And there's a set of fees that other cities are using. I don't know if we can do that or not, but that was another nuance that came up just recently. So I'll let Chuck have it right now.
Okay, thank you. Chuck?
Mayor, Council, Chuck Ahoy, Deputy City Attorney. To go back to the original question, yes, it is accurate that if you fly an unmanned aerial vehicle within a certain distance of the airport, you have to notify the FAA. As long as they don't say, no, you can't do that because of a certain circumstance, that's what you have to do. So that is accurate.
But the state says the city only has to permit it in at least one park. So I am not for not having it in any parks. My preference would be that you designate parks where, so people know if the drones bother them, don't walk your dog there if it drives your dogs crazy. So right now it can be anywhere, and it can be in Evelyn Hallman Park, and we know that some dogs are agitated by it, and it's a big dog walking park. I clean up lots of dog do. So it is not a place between the birds and the animals that are there. It's not the best place to go.
All right, thank you, Deb. Councilman Granville?
Just one question. I thought I understood this, but Joel clarified it for me, so now I'm a little confused. I thought that there was a rule in place now that said that you couldn't keep it from parks. And therefore, the way that we were able to come up with a Tempe regulation was we said, well, you can't launch it from a park, but because the state law says you can fly it in the park. So now if you stand on the sidewalk and you launch the plane and fly it over the park, you're protected under the state laws saying that you have to be able to allow people to fly it in parks. So that's why not allowed. But the flying, we have no, we've been preempted.
Mayor, Councilman, that is correct. ARS.
Right, and so, okay, I'm just going to stop you there. So this is the point, is I think we all sympathize with people who want to walk their dogs in peace and quiet in the park. I hope you sympathize with me that I wish we'd, but we got preempted by the state, right? We got preempted by the state on like a dozen things over the last year. I think I got half a dozen just by myself. And so we have no ability to keep people out of Evelyn Hallman Park.
Phoenix and Scottsdale have ordinances.
Okay.
All right.
That's it. Thank you very much. I really
Thank you, Deb.
appreciate it.
John Nunes? Let him go.
Good evening. My only concern is that most of Tempe is in Class Bravo airspace or Class B surface to 8,000 feet. And I'm just wondering what the thought process is in isolating just North Tempe as opposed to the rest of Tempe. It seems like, pardon? Okay. That's all I had.
Thank you. Councilman Kuby?
Well, Deb's, but should I just wait till all?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, my point was, I think the reason why there are the North Tempe parks, and I do think we should add the Evelyn Hallman Park, is that there's a lot of sensitivity there as desert parks and possibly a preserve, as Papago Park will be a preserve, and the Evelyn Hallman Park has, rare species of birds, and, we're not talking about, other parks in South Tempe or Daly Park is having that sort of, needing that kind of protected status. So I think that's why we're talking about the northern parks. And I understand that we can't prohibit people from flying the drone within the park, but chances are, it seems like it's intuitive, maybe it's not right, but chances are you're going to fly the park, you're going to fly it where you can do it as a takeoff and a landing, and you're not going to fly it, across the street, run over to the park and fly, and maybe you'll do that, but it just seems like it's one added protection that seems to be really important to this neighborhood, and this neighborhood actually has on its shoulders, the preservation of this really fragile area. So I know that we're not voting tonight, but I wonder if we could consider an amendment to include Evelyn Hallman Park to the list of parks. And I also wanted to add that, I guess.
Is that a recommendation for the next? I'm sorry, is that a recommendation for the meeting for June 15th? Is that what you're requesting?
I would like to hear if my fellow council members would agree.
Councilman Granville?
I think candidly, the conversation I had with Councilmember Navarre about this and with the legal is, I don't know what this does. Like, it doesn't do any harm. I just don't think it does any good. given the choice between somebody taking off and landing in a park and then landing in a street and then flying it over to the park, I'm not sure I prefer one over the other. But as it relates to your, so I'm happy to vote in favor of this because I don't think it does any harm. But if the state has told us that you can't keep them from being flown in parks, then so let's say we call it a park, you could still fly it there. And so wouldn't it do us more good? Because now it's not governed by state law, and now we can, in fact. Right, there are no more parks in Tempe. They're all places of gathering. Congratulations, state law doesn't apply. Let's ban drones. And so I'm not sure or giving it a designation actually gives the state more power and us less ability to regulate because they've told us that we can't regulate drones in our parks. And so it would seem. So I don't think it does any harm if you want to do that. I'm happy to vote for it. Restricts our ability to limit.
Councilman Kiwi?
I think it acts to discourage, and it sends a message out that if you're going to fly a drone, we'd rather you fly it in a park that isn't this more protected status and doesn't have a more fragile kind of ecosystem. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. And the other thing, I want to just thank staff and the working group for including e-bikes because we know that we're giving them the authority or opportunity to ride an e-bike in the park, just not engage the motor. And so I think that's an important change and modification of the rules for use. So thank you for that.
Okay. Next item, 6B2, is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance authorizing the abandonment of the remaining portion of the waterline easement located at Baseline Road, east of Rural Road. The second and final public hearing is scheduled for July 27, 2017. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under item 6B2? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, look to my council colleagues. Any comments or discussion? Next item is item 6B3, is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 13 Tempe City Code by amending Section 13-100 relating to the electronic filing for campaign finance. The second and final public hearing is scheduled for June 15, 2017. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under item 6B3? Seeing none. Anyone on the council have any comments on item 6B3? The next agenda item scheduled for second public hearing and final adoption will be considered now. These items were read and introduced on May 25th, 2017, and the votes will be taken tonight. Ordinance and items for second hearing and final adoption. Item 6C1 is to hold a second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance authorizing the abandonment of the waterline easements located at Vista del Lago Drive, Pier 202, Lot 5. Is there anyone, this is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under item 6C1? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Any comments or discussion from the council? Or is there a motion on item 6C1? It's been moved by Councilmember Keating and second by Vice Mayor Ardano Savage. Please vote. Councilman Navarro.
Yes.
Passes 7-0. Got it. Next item is item 6C2, is to hold a second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance authorizing the abandonment of a seepage recovery well maintenance easement located at Vista del Lago Drive at Pier 202, Lot 5. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience willing to address us under item 6C2? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, I'll close that portion. Any comments or discussion from the council or a motion on item 6C2? It's been moved by Councilmember Cubey. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Keating. Please vote.
Yes.
That motion passes 7-0. Item 6C3 is to hold a second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance authorizing the abandonment of a sidewalk, landscape, and public utility easement located on Vista del Lago Drive at Pier 202, Lot 5. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us? Could you please get my attention? I'll close that portion. Is there a comment or a motion on item 6C3 from my council colleagues?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Keating, seconded by Councilmember Cubey. Please vote.
Yes.
That motion passes 7-0. Item 6C4 is to hold a second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance authorizing the abandonment of a portion of the right-of-way located at Vista del Lago Drive, Pier 202, Lot 5. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us on this item? Could you please get my attention? I close that portion. Is there a comment or a motion on item 6C4? Moved by Councilmember Keating. Is it seconded by Councilmember Cubey? Please vote.
Yes.
That motion carries 7-0. The next item under this section is item 6C5, is to hold a second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance for amend planned area development overlay and approve a development plan review for 3 single-story duplex buildings and 212 apartment units within a 5-story building for Friendship Village located at 2645 East Southern Avenue. This is a public hearing item. Is the applicant here? Are they willing to make a statement? Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Cole Marvin. I'm the Executive Director of Friendship Village, Tempe. I know that the one issue that's been brought up is the parking on Evergreen. We're aware of it. Right now, we're spending more than $40,000 between different alternatives to get employees onto our campus, between the bus program, the trip reduction program, the renting parking spaces from Hudson Medical Plaza, as well as what else are we? Oh, bus passes. We're spending about $2,000 a month on bus passes. So we're doing everything I think we can to reasonably reduce the amount of employees that have to drive to Friendship Village. The plan that we're asking for approval on ultimately reduces the number of apartments by 40, more than 40, and increases the number of parking spots on our campus by 327. So I think that our plan that we're asking for is consistent with what the neighbors are looking to achieve.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Iridiana Savage.
Just really quick, Cole, and I know when we had the first public hearing, you had the opportunity to get up and say a little bit, and so I appreciate you getting back up. Just to reiterate, I mean, I know there's been an issue with parking on Evergreen for a really long time, if you talk to anybody in that residence in that area. So I appreciate what you're doing, and I think maybe it would be great to even work with the city to see if there's even some more ways that, you know, maybe able to do some ride share, things to that effect, to really, you know, work with your employees to find better ways. And the fact that you're building more parking on site hopefully will alleviate what's going on Evergreen, because I think that's a concern. So I just wanted to, and I was kind of the one that kind of drug you through the mud, and I apologize. I wasn't an intention, only just I think to make it public, to people to know that you're really working on solving that issue and that concern. So I really do appreciate you coming and being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under item 6C5? Yes. Please come forward. State your name and place of residence for the record.
David Richardson, 2472 East Pebble Beach Drive. I am bringing back up, I know the last meeting I got called out of town, so I wasn't able to make it, but they said, well, they're working on the parking along Evergreen. For the residents there, don't really care for what's going on. If they found some parking, take those cars with it and get them out of there now. Now, the first meeting they had on this when we got invited was at Friendship Village. And I don't know how long they've said they're going to take to build this, but they told us in there it could be 3 to 5 years before this is all done. Does that mean 3 to 5 years? The cars are going to be out there before we have all the parking in? So why can't they found parking? Why can't they move these cars off there too? Now the bus deal, I talked to Sam that runs the bus thing, the blue bus, and the Orbit, I guess is what we have. I had a conversation with him yesterday. It was real good. He's going to try and find out if they can move the sign further south from where it's at now. When they come off Malibu, if they can maybe make a turn. He says, I don't know, I'll have to get with the road department to see if we can do it. Or go down, then he talked about, okay, we can go down Price, make a U-turn at Baseline, come back up and go through the development and be able to park there. But he had to see if that cut his time off, because we're having a problem with the bus, and he didn't know it, that buses are sitting out there for 20 minutes in that area. And that's a left-hand turn area. When 2 or 3 cars get up there to make a left-hand turn, and a lot of people that live in the village come out that gate on Evergreen because there's a light.
Because
They
of
don't
the
want to fight the traffic. And a bus sitting there, I'm afraid we're going to have a wreck one of these days. So I think it's time to move the bus back, if it's possible.
Thank you.
Get the cars out of there.
No, I think you brought up a good point, Mayor.
No, and you did. We're going to address that.
Yeah, and I
Vice
think
Mayor?
Ryan will probably have the answer in regards to how long the construction time is. And another thing, too, that we were concerned about is construction parking, what that's going to look like, and if that's going to be a problem, how long that might be.
That's all I had. Thank you.
And I would like to see if Friendship Village could help work within the current confines of parking, because I know there's a lot of parking. There could be some areas where you could add additional parking within there. You might be in front of some of the residents, but at least it's out of the way, because you have your own side streets with their own duplexes. There might be some willingness, I think, hopefully, that we could figure some things out for this.
Yes, thank you. So the applicant is, during the construction phases of the project and process, they've identified 2 off-site areas that'll accommodate both construction staff and construction workers, utilizing 50 spots over at the Catholic Church site and approximately 150 spots east into the hospital parking area. So as part of that construction phase effort, those spots will be available during the construction phasing of the project site. We've also met with staff, discussed with the applicant. We went on the field site, located, identified probably about 28 plus vehicles that are parked currently on Evergreen. They're parked on the east side of the road. That area is open to the public. The west side has no parking, which is adjacent to the residents of the neighborhood. We feel that's probably the most effective way to address it right now. We're hopeful that the applicant can accommodate and communicate to the employees of the site so that the location options can be available as soon as possible. And we can certainly work with them on that and the timing and scheduling.
Can you come back up here? I'm just going to.
We've counted up to 52 cars parked along Evergreen. That's back to the park, or the end of the wall of the north-south wall of Friendship Village. So they can't put any more cars in there. And when these guys are turning around, making their U-turn in there, it's getting dangerous walking up there. I think it's time to get all these employee cars out of there. We can clean it up too. I don't know if anybody's really looked at it, but it's real dirty along there. One of those drains is almost plugged. And I'm worried about monsoon. We'll have a lake.
We'll certainly look into that.
Thank you. My comment earlier is if you look inside Friendship Village and you have the duplexes, you don't have any on-street parking. Do you allow on-street parking inside?
Not overnight, but event-based parking, yes.
Can you please come back? Well, yeah, the reason why I'm asking is because I'm looking at an aerial shot. If some of because most of the people that park outside here, I'm assuming they are employees that work at Friendship Village.
Yes.
But those employees, if it's only during the day, some of those employees, they may be able to, if you could help find some on-street parking within Friendship Village, that would be helpful too.
On-street parking in the village, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we're willing to work with anybody. We're a good neighbor. We take our neighbor responsibility serious. We park on Evergreen where it is legal to park. If our employees, even if they were legally parking in front of neighbors' homes on the side streets off of Evergreen, we ask the employees do not do that, even though it would be legal for them. So, I mean, we work closely with the neighbors. But, I mean, standing here being 100% honest with you, thinking that we're going to be able to get those folks off of Evergreen, I don't want to mislead anybody. That's going to be very, very difficult to not have people parking on that one side of Evergreen. Oh, no, after construction, that's 327 more spots. We wouldn't need to use Evergreen for anything. It's an underground parking structure is what we're going to build. I don't have the time frame for it right now. I don't know. We're still early phases of talking about financing and those types of items.
If we could have staff really look into this, I think this is important for our residents as well, and important for Friendship Village. I mean, the challenge that we have, this is the second hearing, so the action we take tonight, we need to come up with a solution. And I guess I would ask our city attorney, what's the best way to move forward with a solution regarding the parking?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. We can get with community development staff and review our code provisions and other options that may be available, and then have a meeting with you.
Lauren? I couldn't hear you either.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. We can go ahead and offer to meet and see what options are available. We can look through our code and also our policies and see if there are any options that we can provide during that, either course of construction or prior to that time.
I guess our concern call is we just want you to help sooner than later. So, I mean, obviously we want the success of Friendship Village. It's important to our community. It's a great partner. At the same time, we also want to make sure that we help alleviate some of the concerns on Evergreen.
Yeah, no, I agree. We're on the same page.
All right. This is a public hearing. Is anyone else in the audience wishing to address us under item 6C5, which is the Friendship Village? Seeing none, is there any comments or discussion from the council on item 6C5? I look for a motion on item 6C5. It's been moved by Councilman Shapiro, seconded by Vice Mayor Arredondo Savage. Please vote. Councilman Navarro? Councilman Navarro, are you still there? That motion carries 6-0 with Councilman Navarro absent. Next item is item 6C6, to hold a second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance to amend the Tempe City Code, Chapter 8, Article 1, the Tempe Administrative Code to reinstate the residential fee rebate program. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us on item 6C6? Could you please get my attention? Close that portion. Any other comments or discussion from the council on item 6C6? I just want to make one comment on this. This is a really good rebate program for our residents, and especially with home ownership. And for a lot of times that we work with the Southeast Valley Realtors Association, we've held joint meetings, and we take great pride in our neighborhoods and our parks and the quality of life in our neighborhood. And one of the ways that we thought it would be good as an economic tool and as a thank you to our residents, if you choose to do an addition to your house and you want to do an add-on, the city of Tempe will waive that fee as a good, it's a residential fee rebate program, which encourages our residents to improve their own home. And I think this is something that's, and I think it's something that's great for our city, it's great for our residents, and our architects within the city, as well as our planning department, is more than willing to help our residents with any design as well. And I think this is a great program for our residents and for the quality of life. So I think this is a great project. So is there a motion on item 6C6?
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Navarro.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just chimed in, but I just want to say I'm so proud. I mean, this is something that I know we all been working on for a long time, and I've been working on for a long time. And I think, you know, for the city's point of view, I think you just said it, it's such a great incentive, and I hope we can actually increase more of these types of incentives for our residents within the neighborhood. I just wanted to give that brief thank you to the city for doing this.
All right, it's been a motion by Councilmember Keating. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Cubey. Please vote.
Yes.
That motion carries 7-0. Next item is item 6C7, is to hold a second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance to amend the Tempe City Code, Chapter 8, Article 1, to establish a residential rebate program for engineering plan review and permit fees associated with single-family residential improvements. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience willing to address this? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, I look for a motion on item 6C7. This is similar to what I just mentioned regarding the rebate program. Moved by Councilmember Keating.
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Arredondo Savage. Please vote.
Yes.
That motion carries 7-0. Next is our current events and council announcement. Start with Councilmember Shapiro. Councilmember Granville.
None, Mayor, thank you.
Vice Mayor Arredondo Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things really quick. Just a reminder for anybody that wants to look at our water and waste rates coming up. We actually have a public meeting on this Saturday from 9:30 to 11:30 at the Arizona Community Church. I know Councilmember Granville and and Councilmember Kuby were both at the one we had last night at the History Museum, and I just want to say, great shout out to our staff who are really remarkable. I mean, I know we have some residents that have some concerns, and it's great that they're there to be able to express that, but every single one I've talked to says nothing but very positive things about our staff, and I just say hats off to each and every one of you, and thank you for what you do for making this a really great community. Secondly, I just want to give a shout out to my uncle who recently just passed away, and I got to say he was maybe a fixture. You might have known Hank over at the YMCA, and I know Jeff Kalaga. They were neighbors, and he was kind of the neighborhood watch, but also a really excellent campaigner. So I'm going to miss his signature collection and the support that he's given us. So I just know it's a tough time for the family in that. And also I want to just give a shout out to Jim Lemon and just recognize his loss of his wife, Julie. For those of you who don't know, Jim Lemon has just been an instrument when it comes to Tempe Elementary and what they've been able to do. He's been a board member there for so many years and just always gives. And he's a remarkable person, and Julie is a remarkable person, and together they were a dynamic team and really made a difference in this community, and she is going to be greatly missed. So I just want to let Jim know that, my thoughts and prayers are with him. That's all, Mayor.
Councilmember Kuby. Councilmember Keating. I just want to reiterate some of the comments that have been mentioned. My thoughts and prayers go out to Mary Bishop and her family. As our city manager mentioned, she was very instrumental and involved in Tempe, and my thoughts really go out to her family as well as Vice Mayor mentioned, Hank Arredondo. I've known the Arredondo family pretty much my entire life, and my thoughts and prayers go out to the Arredondo family, as well as to Jim Lemon and regarding his family regarding Julie Bishop or Julie, and I really just want to let everyone know that Tempe is a really great community that cares, and we have a lot of community members that do great things in our community. And the three individuals that have been mentioned have been great contributors to why Tempe is where it is today. So our thoughts go out to their families. With that, I will close that portion. Next is public appearances. We do not have any scheduled public appearances. Under unscheduled public appearances, I do have some cards. I'm assuming it's for the unscheduled public appearances. So I'll go ahead and call Penny Lawson. Come forward. Please state your name and place of residence for the record.
I am Penny Lawson, and I'm from Chandler, Arizona. I'm here representing the Arizona Sustainability Alliance, and our group consists of over 100 residents of Arizona, half of which live and work in Tempe. We are dedicated to promoting and creating cutting-edge project-based sustainability solutions. Personally, I grew up in Tempe in the 60s and 70s when there was nothing south of Baseline besides orange trees and more orange trees. The growth of the city between now and then has been significant, and the city is a much different place than when I grew up here. Tempe, being landlocked, has accommodated growth by increasing density as opposed to sprawl. The increase in concrete, metal, glass, asphalt, etc. for offices and higher density residential buildings that comes with this growth decreases the city's livability. The overall temperature of cities increases with the increase of people in the city, or inorganic materials, and decrease of permeable surfaces. The traffic and the number of people in the city, especially during the workday, has also increased dramatically. We feel the impacts of climate change here in Tempe through increased temperatures that will only compound in the coming years. Trees provide shade, cleaner air, cooler temperatures, and can go a long way to counteract the negative impacts of higher density living. They are a good investment for our parks, making them more attractive to families, sporting events, and workers looking for a break from the office. Trees lend shade for bus stops, increasing the desire of residents and commuters to choose public transportation over personal transportation, reducing the impact on the environment and the effects of global warming by reducing the traffic on our streets, not to mention road rage. Trees provide shade and improve the aesthetics of our medians and right-of-ways. Trees and the benefits they provide can greatly improve the livability of the city of Tempe. Now that a lot of the growth of the businesses has settled in and the recovery from the past economic downturn has stabilized, we feel it's a good time to focus attention back on city livability. The urban forestry plan is an excellent roadmap towards achieving this. We understand that the urban forestry plan will be discussed by the council in September, and we want to make sure there are funds available for it when that discussion takes place. So what we are doing tonight is we are asking that in advance of the discussion in September, that some money be set aside, some funds be set aside towards the urban forestry program. The CEO of Urban Offsets, based in North Carolina, has agreed that if there is an initial investment of $200,000, that would amount to 1,300 new trees planted around Tempe. Each tree would be paired with a carbon offset and revenues of between 50 to 75 per tree. So in total, that 1,300 trees would generate about $65,000 a year for the city. This investment breaks even in about 3.5 years. In addition, our organization, the Arizona Sustainability Alliance, can commit volunteers to planting trees. We understand the trees are a long-term investment, so we think that starting now is better. We don't want to wait. The sooner that we begin implementation, the sooner the city and the residents can begin to reap the benefits. So our group, okay, I'm sorry. So anyway, we look forward to the discussion in September and hope to have funds available at that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your consideration.
The next card I have is Bill Goodman.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm here not only as a Tempe resident. My address is 2058 East Myrna Lane in 85284, but I'm also here representing the council, the executive council for the Tempe Chamber of Commerce. And many of you may have received emails concerning the pre-K initiative, and we would just like to go on the record that we oppose this for the following reasons. We feel that the lack of transparency in this pre-K discussion was, and I'll use the word that was actually selected by the board, which is alarming. We feel that the lack of sustainable funding is certainly room for concern. And then we also would like to know, in the pre-K education measure, will it include anyone or any individuals outside of the city of Tempe limits?
Councilor Spira, you cannot engage.
We have the budget agendized for tonight.
That's the next meeting.
So he's speaking in the wrong meeting then?
No, this is a public comment. Anyone can speak in public comment. It's unscheduled public appearances. You can speak,
Actually,
but we cannot comment.
But if the council is criticized, you can respond under the open meeting laws. Criticize the city for lack of transparency.
I would defer to our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I think that could be couched as a personal criticism of certain members of council who may have participated in some of the working groups. But I guess I would have to defer to the speaker on that.
Mayor, as one of those members, I would like to respond.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. So first on the transparency point, Mr. Goodman, were you there at the February 5th meeting where the concept was introduced, the public meeting here at the council chambers?
No, I was not.
Okay, Mr. Goodman, were you here at the April 23rd of 2015 meeting where we discussed a survey and the original pilot proposal?
No, I was not.
The public meeting here. Mr. Goodman, were you here at the February 18th of 2016 meeting where we discussed the application to the Institute for Child Success and the possibility of working with them, the public meeting here?
No, I was not.
Were you at the March 16th of 2017 meeting where we got the ICS report and gave direction to our staff to put together a budget for the program, the public meeting that was here?
No, it was not. However, it was reported to us by an individual that we employ to represent us that these concerns were not addressed, that it was in a working group, which was not an open session, and therefore we have concerns with it. So I would like to see you address the comments that I made. Is there going to be a sustainable funding measure for this? Will it be brought to the entire board, and will this be made more public than it was in the working group?
Mayor, just to clarify, first, the meetings I'm talking about were public meetings of the entire council that were agendized publicly, and the public was invited to come to those meetings and potentially speak on each of these agenda items, ask these questions. Nobody from your organization, as far as I know, attended any of those meetings until the March meeting, and nobody spoke at any of those meetings until the March meeting. So there were plenty of opportunities for you and members of your organization to engage. We also had a meeting on May 25th. I assume you were also not at that meeting either. That was the 5th public meeting, this being the 6th public meeting that we've had on this issue. So I wanted to address the transparency. In terms of the sustainable funding, I'm not sure, is that within the purview of things I'm allowed to respond to? I'll be happy to respond to it during the budget meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, perhaps it would be better addressed during the budget meeting when it's on the agenda.
I will address that question, sir. I just won't be able to address it until the agendized budget meeting, which will be in a few minutes. So if you hang around, I'll answer your question.
Are you then also able to answer the question, will this be applicable to members outside of the city of Tempe?
Mayor, I can answer that question, and I will remember to address that when we get to the budget meeting.
Actually, I believe we're going to have a meeting on the 14th, a Cal working group.
I could address it in both, Mayor. I'll talk about both times.
And can I ask when the next meeting will be, when this will be discussed?
Mayor, it's agendized, I think, for the 14th and 15th. So we'll be discussing it tonight. We'll be discussing it next week on the 14th and next week on the 15th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Ephraim? All right, help me out. How do you pronounce your last name? McLaughlin?
McLaughlin. I don't know if there was any input on the street carts or the green bikes that are by the library, Tempe Library, and with those green bikes, no one's been using them, and I think I don't know if you guys got federal funding or what, but I think it's kind of a waste of city money or federal money because no one's going to be using them. People could buy a bike for at least $100, and with the street cart that you guys are going to be putting in, it's going to make the street smaller and condense, so people won't be able to drive their car, and it may cause more accidents. And with that, I think that I think people should have more input on those decisions, like the green bikes, if they want that in their city, because I don't know if there was a input on that, and that's about it. Thanks.
Can I ask you your place of residence for the record?
I live on Alameda.
Thank you. We can't engage because it's under unscheduled public appearances and it's not on this agenda.
Oh, thanks
Thank
for
you.
letting me speak.
That's all the cards I have. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address us under unscheduled public appearances? Could you please get my attention?